I lost my brother in 2016. I live in a rural town, and the effect in a small rural town is really evident when somebody suicides. The biggest challenges I faced and we faced as a family were largely stigma and myth. People's reactions were quite unusual towards us. People really wanted to be supportive and help, but they didn't really know how to, and so often they would say things that were quite uncomfortable and even inappropriate. And it's just lack of knowledge on how to react to somebody who has been affected by suicide. Losing a loved one to suicide is very isolating, and I found that there wasn't a lot of knowledge or help in our community for us to kind of move on and deal with our grief. So talking to other people who have been through a similar experience, and going to places like Beyond Blue, Roses in the Ocean, and one that really helped my family in particular was Stand By After Suicide, because they deal with people that have had a similar experience, and so we were able to learn a little bit more about suicide and why it happens. The grief that is caused when you lose somebody to suicide is a different, more complicated kind of grief, and I think that it's very hard to relate to the grief if you haven't been through the experience. People's advice is often, you need to move on, you need to get over it, you can't keep dwelling on the fact that this event has happened, but really the best thing is to actually just accept people, the way that people are grieving, and give them time and not encourage them to try and push forward and get over their grief quickly. In many ways within my family there was a lot of disconnection. People had very different reactions to the event. People grieved very differently. In another sense, it brought our family much closer together because we had to really talk about and deal with what had happened and why it had happened. Within the community, there was a lot of people reaching out to us and trying to connect with us, which was really good, but there was also a lot of disconnection because of the way that it was such a unique experience for us. Most people haven't dealt with that, and most people haven't dealt with the kind of grief and the kind of complications that come with suicide. If you have had a family member or friend that has suicided, there are services that you can go to get support and help. Stand By After Suicide is one which is really good because it is specifically directed at helping people who have had a lived experience of losing someone to suicide. Roses in the Ocean, Beyond Blue, there's lots and lots of different ones. You might think that no one can help you and that you do feel very isolated and alone, but there are other people who have had the experience. With suicide, there are signs that suicide may occur, but there are also risk factors. I think that if each individual person takes a little bit more notice of people when they are having risk factors, so things like relationship breakdown, loss of job, if we actually take a little bit more time to look after each other, then hopefully we won't get to the point of suicide signs. If you feel like someone is perhaps suicidal or is showing suicidal signs, you need to directly ask them if they are thinking about suicide. It's a really hard question. It's very confronting, but it needs to be asked. If you are not confident enough to ask a question like that, then there are people that you can go to ask the question, or you can find out how to ask the question. Every person can do a 1-hour QPR training which gives you a little bit of confidence that asking if someone is thinking about suicide is the right thing to do. There's suicide prevention groups in every community now. They would have the information for you or could direct you to people or services so that you can get the confidence to either ask someone if they are thinking about suicide or to get someone to ask them for you. The best way to help someone after they have lost someone to suicide is really just to listen to what they have to say, listen to what they want to talk about. It may be really uncomfortable for you to listen, but it will really help them in moving forward. Often people want to say something to somebody who has lost somebody to suicide. My advice would be the best thing that you could say is, "I'm really sorry." And that's really, you can't really say much more than that. Often after someone has died by suicide, people don't really want to talk about the person because it's painful, but it is really important to talk about the good memories and the good times so that you remember the life that the person had rather than the way that they lost their life. When my brother took his life, it was a very hard thing to cope with, and for a long period of time it really, really affected me, and it was very hard to move forward. The thing that helped me move forward was to think about his life and what he was achieving in his life. Matthew was a member of the SES and he had a real focus on helping other people. He was always very giving and he would do anything that people asked of him. And so that is part of the reason that I am becoming involved in suicide prevention, because I think that by talking about suicide prevention, trying to break down the stigma, talking about Matthew's story, he is in a way still helping people. By sharing Matthew's story, it is my hope that every individual person learns a little bit about suicide, a little bit about the signs, and a little bit about risk factors, because a little bit of knowledge, if everyone has a little bit of knowledge, then we can better look after each other, and it is my hope that, people will potentially be saved.